Marcus woke to a sound he had never heard before, a harmonious humming that seemed to resonate in his very bones. The dragon was awake, its great head raised toward the dawn sky, producing the ethereal melody that had pulled him from sleep. But something was different about the creature. The gashes that had covered its flanks were gone, leaving only faint silver lines where the wounds had been. The broken wing was whole again, stretching magnificently in the morning light. The dragon's scales gleamed with renewed vitality, and when it turned to look at Marcus, those golden eyes blazed with an inner fire that spoke of ancient power awakened. Marcus scrambled to his feet, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The dragon's pregnancy was more pronounced now, but the creature moved with fluid grace despite its condition. It studied Marcus for a long moment, then did something that nearly stopped his heart. It spoke. The words came not as sound, but as thoughts that bloomed directly in his mind, carrying with them emotions and concepts that human language could barely contain. "Small warm friend," the dragon communicated, and the name carried layers of meaning, gratitude, affection, recognition of his courage despite his physical limitations. "I am Valdris, last mother of the star-touched, guardian of the deep void." The introduction came with a flood of images, vast ships sailing between stars, worlds beyond counting, civilizations that spanned galaxies. "You have shown kindness to one you believed could destroy you. This act has awakened what was dormant within me." Marcus found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "I don't understand. Yesterday you were dying and now—" "Yesterday I was merely flesh and blood, a refugee fleeing the destruction of my home world. Today I remember what I truly am." Valdris lowered her massive head until she was eye level with Marcus. "Your act of selfless compassion has triggered an ancient covenant, small warm friend. You fed me when you had nothing to spare. You sheltered me when you were alone and afraid. You treated me as kin when I was a stranger." The dragon's thoughts carried a weight of ceremony, as if she were reciting words that had been spoken across countless worlds and eons. "By the laws that govern the star-touched, you have awakened the bond of souls. What was mine is now yours to share. What was yours is now mine to protect." Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body, starting where the dragon's breath touched his skin. He looked down at his hands and gasped. The calluses and scars from years of hard farming were fading. The chronic ache in his back from lifting heavy equipment simply vanished. He felt stronger, more vital than he had in decades. "The bond changes both of us," Valdris explained, amusement coloring her mental voice. "You have given me back my power through your kindness. In return, I share with you the gifts of the star-touched. You will live as long as I do, see as far as I can see, understand languages that have never touched human ears." "How long do you live?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "I have seen the birth and death of 17 star systems. I was ancient when your species first looked up at the night sky and wondered what lay beyond." The dragon's mental voice carried a gentle humor. "But do not fear, small warm friend. The bond does not make you alien to your own kind. You remain human in all the ways that matter." As if to prove her point, Marcus felt his stomach rumble with very human hunger. Valdris's mental laughter was like silver bells chiming in his mind. "Indeed, we both require sustenance. But first there is something you must see." Valdris gestured with her great head toward Marcus's fields, and he turned to look at his failed crops. What he saw made him stagger backward in amazement. Where yesterday there had been withered stalks and barren soil, now there were rows upon rows of the most magnificent wheat he had ever seen. The grain heads were heavy and golden, swaying in the gentle morning breeze. "The bond extends to all that you tend with love," Valdris explained. "Your crops feel your care and respond to the life force that now flows through you. They will grow strong and true, providing abundance where once there was scarcity." Marcus walked through his transformed fields in a daze, running his fingers through grain that should have taken months to grow. The wheat was not only mature but superior to any variety he had ever seen. Each kernel gleamed like a tiny jewel, and he somehow knew without testing that it would be incredibly nutritious. "This is impossible," he whispered. Impossible is a word used by those who have not yet seen the true scope of the universe. Valdris replied gently. "You have been alone here for 3 years, small warm friend. You have endured hardship that would have broken lesser spirits. The cosmos has taken notice of your resilience and rewarded it. As Marcus continued to explore his transformed homestead, he began to notice other changes. His well, which had been running low, now bubbled with crystal-clear water that tasted sweeter than anything he remembered. The solar panels on his habdome glowed with increased efficiency, their surfaces somehow renewed. Even his broken communication array showed signs of repair, loose connections mysteriously resolving themselves. But the most remarkable change was in the very air around his homestead. It felt charged with possibility, as if the fundamental laws of physics were just a bit more flexible here than elsewhere. Marcus could sense patterns and connections that had always been invisible to him before, understanding flowing into his mind without conscious effort. The awakening of our bond sends ripples through space and time, Valdris warned, her mental voice taking on a note of urgency. Others will have felt the disturbance. Some will come seeking answers, and not all of them will have peaceful intentions. What others? Marcus asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. The galaxy is vast and filled with species both wondrous and terrible. The star-touched were once guardians of the weak and protectors of the innocent. That power has been dormant for millennia, but now it stirs again. Valdris's scales shimmered as she spoke, patterns of light racing across her form. There are those who believed our kind extinct, who grew bold in our absence. They will not welcome our return. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Are you saying we're in danger? We are always in danger, small warm friend. But now we also have the power to face that danger as equals. Valdris's mental voice carried absolute confidence. You have given me back my strength, and I will teach you to use the gifts that are now yours. Together we will be ready for whatever comes. As if summoned by her words, a bright streak appeared in the morning sky, growing larger by the second. Marcus shaded his eyes and squinted upward, trying to make out details of what was clearly an approaching spacecraft. Valdris rose to her full height, wings spreading wide as she tasted the air. Her mental voice carried a grim satisfaction. It begins sooner than I expected. The first visitors approach, drawn by the awakening of power they thought lost forever. Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he surveyed his dying crops. The red soil of Kepler 442b stretched endlessly around his small homestead, cracked and barren where his wheat should have been thriving. 3 years of failed harvest had reduced his once promising farm to a handful of struggling vegetables and his last precious chicken. The isolation protocols meant no supply ships for another 8 months. His emergency rations had run out 2 weeks ago, and the communication array had been damaged in the last storm. Marcus was truly alone on this frontier world, 47 light years from Earth, with nothing but his determination and a dwindling food supply. As the twin suns began to set, casting eerie shadows across the landscape, Marcus heard something that made his blood freeze. A low, rumbling growl echoed from the rocky outcropping near his water well. He grabbed his plasma rifle, though he knew it had barely enough charge for one shot. What emerged from behind the rocks defied everything he thought he knew about the supposedly uninhabited planet. A massive creature, easily 20 feet long, dragged itself into view. Its scales shimmered with an oily rainbow sheen, and wings that could have spanned a small building hung limp and tattered at its sides. The creature's head was unmistakably draconic, with intelligent golden eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom and pain. But it was the creature's condition that stopped Marcus cold. Deep gashes covered its flanks, and one wing appeared to be broken. Worse still, the creature was clearly pregnant, its swollen belly making movement difficult. The dragon collapsed near his well, breathing heavily, those golden eyes fixed on him with a mixture of wariness and desperate hope. Marcus lowered his rifle slowly. The creature made no aggressive moves, only watched him with an intelligence that was startlingly human-like. When the dragon tried to reach the water, it collapsed again, too weak to make the final few feet. Every survival instinct screamed at Marcus to stay back, to protect himself and his remaining resources. This was an unknown alien species on a planet that was supposed to be empty. The creature could be dangerous, could carry diseases, could be the advanced scout for an invasion force. But as Marcus looked into those ancient, pain-filled eyes, he saw something that transcended species barriers. He saw a mother fighting to survive for her unborn child. Marcus set his rifle aside and approached slowly, his hands visible and empty. The dragon tensed but didn't retreat. When he knelt beside the water well and filled his largest bucket, the creature's eyes followed his every movement. Marcus dragged the heavy container to within the dragon's reach and stepped back. The dragon drank deeply, its forked tongue lapping at the precious water. When it finished, it fixed Marcus with a gaze that seemed to say thank you in a universal language that needed no translation. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, Marcus faced an impossible decision. His last chicken represented his final source of protein, the difference between surviving until the next supply ship and slowly starving to death. But the dragon was clearly malnourished, its ribs showing through its damaged scales. Marcus thought about his wife Sarah, who had died in the colony ship disaster that stranded him here. She had always said that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or technology, but in their capacity for compassion, even when it defied logic. With hands that shook only slightly, Marcus walked to his chicken coop and wrung the neck of his last hen. He built a small fire and cooked the bird slowly, the smell making his empty stomach clench with hunger. When the meat was ready, he divided it carefully. Half went onto his own plate, a meal that should last him 2 days if he was careful. The other half he placed on a metal tray and carried to the dragon. The creature's nostrils flared as it caught the scent of cooked meat. Marcus set the tray down within reach and returned to his own meal. They ate in silence, human and dragon, sharing what might be the last cooked meal either of them would ever taste. When they finished, the dragon managed to lift its great head and looked directly at Marcus. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that transcended the barriers of language and species. The dragon's eyes held a depth of gratitude that Marcus felt in his bones. As the alien moons rose overhead, Marcus spread his extra blankets near the dragon's massive form. The creature's body heat would help him survive the cold night, and perhaps his presence would provide some comfort to the injured mother-to-be. Marcus fell asleep to the steady rhythm of the dragon's breathing, wondering if he had just made the most foolish or the most human decision of his life. In his dreams, he saw Sarah's face, smiling with approval at his choice to show kindness to a fellow mother in need. Neither human nor dragon noticed the strange aurora that began to dance across the night sky, or the way the very air around them seemed to shimmer with an energy that had nothing to do with the planet's magnetic field. Something ancient and powerful had taken notice of their simple act of interspecies compassion, and the wheels of destiny were beginning to turn. The last thing Marcus remembered before sleep claimed him was the dragon's tail curling protectively around his small form, as if the creature understood that they were now bound together by something greater than mere survival. The approaching spacecraft was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It moved with predatory grace, its obsidian hull reflecting the twin suns like a dark mirror. As it descended toward his homestead, he could make out weapon ports along its sleek sides and the angular design that spoke of a culture built for war. Keth Mori, Valdris identified, her mental voice heavy with ancient hatred. Slave takers and world devourers, they must have felt the awakening from several star systems away to arrive so quickly. What do they want? Marcus asked, though his enhanced senses were already providing disturbing answers. He could feel the malevolent intent radiating from the ship like heat from a forge. They want what they have always wanted: power over others. The Kethamori enslaved entire species when the star-touched were dormant. They will see our renewed bond as a threat to their empire of suffering. The ship settled onto Marcus's transformed fields with barely a whisper of displaced air. A hatch opened with a hydraulic hiss, and the beings that emerged confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The Kethamori stood 8 feet tall on reverse-jointed legs, their bodies covered in chitinous armor that gleamed with an oily sheen. Multiple arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and their elongated heads housed clusters of black, multifaceted eyes that missed nothing. The leader wore additional armor plates marked with symbols that Marcus somehow understood spoke of rank and the number of worlds conquered. When it spoke, the words came out as clicks and hisses, but the translation bloomed in Marcus's mind thanks to his new bond with Valdris. "Star-touched dragon," the leader chittered. "You were reported dead with the rest of your pathetic species. Yet here you are, somehow renewed." The creature's gaze swept over Marcus dismissively. "And bonded to this primitive meat sack, I see. How far the mighty have fallen." Valdris drew herself up to her full height, wings spreading wide enough to cast shadows over the entire landing site. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of eons. "Commander Zakthor of the 4th Harvesting Fleet, I remember your predecessor's grandfather. He at least had the wisdom to show proper respect when addressing his betters. The Kethmori leader's mandibles clacked in what Marcus realized was laughter. Respect? For a dying breed clinging to a worthless human? The galaxy has moved beyond your kind, dragon. We rule the spaceways now. Entire sectors bow before the might of the Kethmori Empire. Built on the bones of the innocent, Valdris replied, her mental voice simultaneously reaching Marcus. Be ready, small warm friend. This will not end with words. Innocent is a concept for the weak, Zakthor hissed. Just as your bond with this human proves your weakness. But perhaps this meeting is fortuitous. A living star touched will make an excellent addition to our gladiatorial arenas, and your human pet will serve as a fine example of what happens to those who dare stand with our enemies. At a gesture from their commander, the other Kethmori spread out in a practiced formation, weapons appearing in their multiple hands. Marcus felt his heart racing but found that fear was balanced by something else, a calm certainty that seemed to flow from his bond with Valdris. Trust in what you have become, the dragon advised. The power flows through both of us now. Marcus stepped forward, surprised by his own boldness. You made one mistake, Bugface. You assumed we were the same people you could have bullied yesterday. Zakthor's attention focused on him with predatory intensity. The meat sack speaks. How amusing. Tell me, human, what grand delusions of power does your new bond give you? Instead of answering with words, Marcus reached out with senses he was still learning to use. The Kethmori ship hummed with electronic systems, all of them suddenly as clear to him as his own heartbeat. With a thought that felt as natural as breathing, he sent a pulse of energy through the ship's neural networks. Every weapon system shut down simultaneously. Life support flickered and died. The ship's AI core, such as it was, simply ceased to function. In the space of 3 seconds, the most advanced piece of military technology in this star system became nothing more than an elaborate paperweight. The Kethmori commander's eyes widened in shock. Impossible. Our ships are shielded against all known forms of electronic warfare. Known to you, Marcus replied calmly. The star touched were manipulating energy fields when your species was still learning to bang rocks together. Valdris's approval flowed through their bond like warm honey. Well said, small warm friend. Now let us show them why the old treaties were signed in fear. What happened next unfolded with the terrible beauty of a force of nature. Valdris reared back and unleashed a stream of flame that was nothing like the simple fire-breathing of Earth legends. This was stellar flame, the concentrated fury of dying stars given form and purpose. The heat was so intense that the very air sang with power, but the fire was only the beginning. As the Kethmori scattered, trying to bring their personal weapons to bear, Marcus discovered that his enhanced perception allowed him to see their movements before they made them. Their thoughts, alien as they were, broadcast their intentions clearly enough for him to anticipate every attack. He moved with fluid grace that would have been impossible with his human reflexes alone, dodging plasma bolts that would have turned him to ash. When one of the warriors got too close, Marcus reached out and simply touched its armored chest. The enhanced life force flowing through him proved incompatible with the Kethmori's biology. The warrior collapsed, its nervous system overloaded by energies it had no capacity to process. Meanwhile, Valdris was demonstrating why the star touched had once been feared across the galaxy. She moved with impossible speed for something her size, her claws rending through advanced armor as if it were paper. When the Kethmori tried to coordinate their attacks, she would vanish in a shimmer of displaced light only to reappear behind them, striking with precision that spoke of centuries of combat experience. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 5 minutes. When the smoke cleared, Commander Zakthor knelt alone among the bodies of his warriors, his weapons gone and his armor cracked. Dark ichor leaked from multiple wounds, and his compound eyes showed the kind of fear that came from facing something beyond comprehension. Mercy, he chittered in the common tongue, all his earlier arrogance gone. I claim the right of honorable surrender. Valdris loomed over him, her golden eyes blazing with righteous anger. Honor. You speak of honor while your empire profits from the enslavement of entire worlds. Your species has forgotten the meaning of that word. Marcus felt the dragon's rage through their bond and understood her desire for revenge. The Kethmori had caused immeasurable suffering throughout the galaxy. Justice demanded retribution. But something else stayed his partner's wrath. The memory of a human farmer who had shared his last meal with a stranger. Let him live, Marcus said quietly. Both Valdris and the Kethmori commander looked at him in surprise. Not out of mercy, Marcus continued, his voice carrying new authority, but so he can carry a message back to his empire. Tell them that the Star-Touched have returned. Tell them that the age of unchecked tyranny is ending. And tell them that humanity stands with those who protect the innocent. Zakthor nodded frantically, clearly eager to escape with his life. Yes, yes. The message will be delivered. The Empire will know of your return. As the broken commander limped toward his dead ship, Valdris's mental voice carried a mixture of admiration and concern. You show wisdom beyond your years, small warm friend, but you realize this mercy will bring war to your doorstep. Marcus looked out at his transformed homestead, then up at the star-filled sky that suddenly seemed much less empty than before. Then we'd better get ready for it. The disabled Kethmori ship limped away into the void, leaving Marcus and Valdris alone with the magnitude of what had just occurred. But their solitude didn't last long. Within hours, the sky began to fill with new arrivals, though these ships approached with very different intentions. The first to land was a vessel that seemed grown rather than built, its organic curves gleaming like mother of pearl in the afternoon light. From it emerged beings that Marcus's enhanced senses immediately identified as peaceful. They stood 7 feet tall on graceful legs, their skin shifting through subtle color patterns that he somehow understood conveyed emotion and intent. The Velthari, Valdris identified with obvious pleasure, healers and philosophers. They were among our closest allies in the old days. The lead Velthari approached with hands extended in a gesture that transcended species barriers. When she spoke, her voice was like music, the words flowing directly into Marcus's mind with gentle warmth. Star-touched Valdris, last mother of the deep void, we felt the awakening across 3 sectors. The Council of Harmony sends greetings and renewed hope. The being's attention turned to Marcus, and her color patterns shifted to deep blues and golds that spoke of respect and curiosity. And to the human who catalyzed the return of light to dark places, we offer friendship and alliance. More ships arrived throughout the day, each bringing representatives of species that had suffered under Kethmori oppression or had simply waited for the return of the star-touched guardians. Marcus found himself at the center of an impromptu galactic summit, his small homestead becoming a meeting place for beings from across known space. There were the crystalline Shalveth, who communicated through harmonic resonances that made his bones vibrate pleasantly. The insectoid Mordain brought news of entire slave colonies that had risen in revolt upon hearing of the dragon's return. Even the mysterious energy beings known only as the Whispers manifested as shimmering auroras to pledge their support. But it was the arrival of Captain Elena Vasquez that truly drove home the scope of what was happening. Her battered exploration vessel settled onto Marcus's fields with the uncertain grace of a ship pushed far beyond its design limits. When she emerged, her colonial fleet uniform was scorched and torn, her face bearing the haunted look of someone who had seen too much. "Marcus Chen?" she called out, her voice cracking with exhaustion. "I'm Captain Vasquez of the survey ship New Horizon. We received your distress beacon 3 days ago, but by the time we got here..." She gestured helplessly at the gathering of alien ships. What in God's name is happening here? Marcus realized with a start that his communication array must have repaired itself completely, broadcasting news of the recent events across local space. "It's a long story, Captain. But the short version is that Earth isn't alone in the universe, and we just made some very powerful friends. As night fell, the various alien delegations shared their histories and their hopes around a massive bonfire that Valdris had kindled with controlled stellar flame. Marcus found himself serving as translator and intermediary, his enhanced abilities allowing him to understand the nuances of communication between species that had never directly interacted before. The stories they told painted a picture of a galaxy groaning under the weight of the Kethmori Empire's expansion. Entire star systems had been stripped of resources, their populations enslaved or worse. The warrior slavers had grown bold in the absence of the star-touched, believing themselves the ultimate predators in a cosmos full of prey. "The situation is worse than we initially understood," reported Zefkai of the Velthari. Her color patterns shifted to somber purples as she continued. "Our intelligence networks report massive fleet movements throughout Kethmori space. They're not just planning a punitive expedition, They're preparing for total war. Captain Vasquez, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally found her voice. How many ships are we talking about? Conservative estimates suggest 1,200 heavy cruisers, backed by perhaps 4,000 smaller vessels. Came the reply from a Mordain strategist whose mandibles clicked nervously. They've been building up their forces for decades, planning a final push to claim the remaining free worlds. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. All of this because I shared a meal with a hungry dragon? Not because of your kindness, small warm friend. Valdris corrected gently through their bond. Because your kindness awakened power that was always meant to stand against such darkness. The Kethmori would have launched this campaign eventually. At least now the galaxy has hope of resistance. Hope is a start, Captain Vasquez said grimly, but it won't stop 1,200 cruisers. The colonial fleet has maybe 30 ships in this entire sector, and most of those are exploration vessels like mine. Numbers alone do not determine victory, interjected a new voice. The speaker was unlike any of the other aliens present, tall and angular, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When Marcus's enhanced senses touched the being's mind, he found depths that spoke of knowledge accumulated over millennia. Keeper Nulvash of the Eternal Archive, Valdris identified with something approaching reverence. They are the living memory of the galaxy, guardians of knowledge from 1,000,000 dead civilizations. Keeper Nulvash stepped into the firelight, their presence causing the flames to dance in impossible patterns. The Archive remembers the last great war against the Kethmori's predecessors. Victory came not from superior numbers, but from unity among the free peoples and the guidance of the Star-Touched. The Keeper gestured, and holographic images began to form in the air above the gathering. Star maps showed fleet movements and battle formations, technological blueprints for weapons that could level mountains, and most remarkably, defensive networks that spanned multiple star systems. These are the Guardian protocols, Nulvash explained. Defensive strategies developed during the height of Star-Touched civilization. Each free world becomes a fortress, linked to its neighbors through quantum communication networks. When one world falls under attack, every allied system responds instantly. Marcus studied the intricate displays, his enhanced mind grasping concepts that would have been incomprehensible days ago. It's like a galactic immune system. Any threat triggers a coordinated response. Precisely. But the protocols require something that has been absent for millennia, a Star-Touch to serve as the central coordination node. The Keeper's attention fixed on Valdris. Will you accept this responsibility, Last Mother? Valdris was quiet for a long moment, her massive form still as stone. When she finally responded, her mental voice carried the weight of destiny accepted. I will bear this burden, as my ancestors did before me. But I cannot do it alone. Her golden gaze turned to Marcus. The protocols were designed for a bonded pair, dragon and rider, working in perfect harmony. The human partner serves as the intuitive bridge between disparate species, while the Star-Touch provides the raw power to coordinate across impossible distances. Marcus felt every eye in the gathering fixed upon him. The magnitude of what was being asked hit him like a physical blow. They weren't just asking him to help defend his homestead, they were asking him to help coordinate the defense of an entire galaxy. I'm just a farmer, he said quietly. Captain Vasquez let out a bitter laugh. With respect, Chen, I don't think that's true anymore. I've been monitoring communications traffic for the past 6 hours. Word of what happened here is spreading faster than wildfire. The Kethmori Empire is mobilizing, yes, but so is every oppressed world in their territory. Slave colonies are declaring independence. Free worlds are forming defensive pacts. Hell, even some of the neutral systems are picking sides. She gestured at the alien ships surrounding them. You've become a symbol, whether you wanted to or not. The human who awakened the Star-Touched, the farmer who stood against the Empire. People are calling it the beginning of the Liberation War. Marcus looked around at the diverse gathering of species, each one looking to him and Valdris for leadership in the fight that was coming. The weight of their expectations was crushing, but underneath it he felt something else, the same quiet determination that had driven him to share his last meal with a dying dragon. "Then we'd better make sure it's a war we can win," he said finally. Valdris's approval flowed through their bond like liquid fire, spoken like a true guardian, small warm friend. "Now let us begin preparing for the storm that comes." The transformation of Marcus's homestead into the command center for a galactic resistance happened with breathtaking speed. Within a week, his small farm had become the hub of the largest military coordination effort in recorded history. The Velthari had grown crystalline communication arrays that stretched toward the sky like alien trees, their faceted surfaces catching and redirecting quantum signals across impossible distances. Moradane engineers scuttled between defensive installations that seemed to sprout from the red soil itself, their mandibles clicking in satisfaction as weapon emplacements aligned themselves with mathematical precision. But the most remarkable change was in Marcus himself. Each day brought new aspects of his enhanced abilities to light. He found he could simultaneously monitor communications from hundreds of worlds, his consciousness splitting and flowing along the quantum channels that Valdris maintained with effortless grace. "Status report from the Rigel sector," he announced to the assembled War Council, his voice carrying information that his enhanced mind was processing in real time. "The Shalveth crystal farms have been fully militarized. They're ready to begin manufacturing quantum disruptors." Captain Vasquez, now serving as liaison with the rapidly arriving human colonial forces, shook her head in amazement. "6 months ago, we didn't even know faster-than-light communication was possible. Now you're coordinating supply chains across half the galaxy." "The bond grows stronger each day," Valdris observed through their mental link. "Your mind adapts to cosmic awareness as naturally as a flower turns toward the sun." The dragon herself had undergone changes that were equally dramatic. Her scales now carried patterns of light that shifted and flowed like living circuitry, each design corresponding to a different aspect of the Guardian protocols. When she spread her wings, holographic displays materialized in the air between them, showing real-time tactical information from across known space. The news wasn't all encouraging. The Kethmori Empire had indeed launched their grand offensive, but their strategy was more cunning than anyone had anticipated. Instead of attacking the obvious military targets, they had focused on the economic and communication infrastructure that held galactic civilization together. "They're not trying to conquer territory," analyzed Keeper Nulvash, their dark forms seeming to absorb the light from the tactical displays. "They're attempting to fragment the galaxy back into isolated systems, cut the quantum networks, disrupt trade routes, and force each world to face them alone." Marcus felt the truth of that assessment through his growing connection to the galactic communication web. Entire sectors were going dark as Kethmori raiding fleets severed the quantum relay stations that linked distant worlds. Without coordination, the alliance of free peoples would crumble into a collection of targets to be picked off at leisure. "We need to shift tactics," he realized aloud. "Instead of trying to defend everything, we focus on maintaining the communication network. Keep the alliance connected and we can respond to their raids with coordinated strikes." "Easier said than done," Captain Vasquez pointed out. "The quantum relays are massive installations. They can't be moved or hidden, and each one requires enormous amounts of power to maintain. Unless," Valdris interjected, her mental voice carrying a note of ancient memory, "we use the old methods." The dragon's consciousness touched Marcus's more directly than ever before, and suddenly he was seeing through her memories, visions of star-touched dragons soaring between worlds, their bodies serving as living quantum relays. The organic neural networks of their species could maintain communication links across interstellar distances without the need for massive technological installations. "Biological relay networks," Marcus breathed. "But there's only one of you left, one star-touched, yes. But the protocols were designed to work with bonded pairs. Your enhanced neural structure can be adapted to serve the same function as a quantum relay." Valdris's mental voice carried both excitement and concern. The process would be intense. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, alarms began screaming across the command center. The tactical displays flared to life, showing a massive Kethmori fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and more fighters than our sensors can count, reported a Mordane technician, his mandibles chattering with nervous energy. "They're moving fast and broadcasting on all frequencies." The transmission that came through was pure Kethmori arrogance. The same Commander Zakthor who had fled in defeat now appeared on the main display, his chitinous features twisted in what passed for a smile among his species. "Star-touched dragon and her pet human," he hissed in the common tongue. "Did you truly believe the Empire would allow your little rebellion to continue? We bring the full might of the Fourth Harvesting Fleet to end this farce. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths relatively quick." Marcus felt something cold and hard settle in his chest as he looked at the tactical display. The Kethmori fleet was massive, easily capable of reducing his homestead and everyone on it to radioactive ash. Around him, the various alien delegates were calculating odds and escape routes, their earlier confidence evaporating in the face of overwhelming force. But through his bond with Valdris, Marcus felt something else entirely. The dragon's consciousness was expanding, reaching out through the quantum networks to touch every allied force within a dozen star systems. Ancient protocols were activating, dormant systems coming online and across the galaxy. Ships were turning toward Kepler 442b with desperate haste. They made a mistake coming here in person. Valdris's mental voice carried grim satisfaction. They've given us the perfect opportunity to demonstrate what unified resistance can accomplish. All stations. This is Guardian Protocol Alpha, Marcus found himself saying, his voice somehow reaching every allied ship and station within range. The words flowed through him with automatic precision, as if they had been waiting centuries to be spoken. Target designation, Kethmori 4th Fleet. Convergence point, Kepler 442b. All available forces, execute maximum burn. The response was immediate and overwhelming. From the Rigel sector, a squadron of Shalveth crystal ships began their hyperjump sequence, their organic hulls glowing with stored starlight. The Velthari healing fleets diverted course, their vessels transforming into configurations designed for war rather than mercy. Even the mysterious whispers began manifesting in local space, their energy forms crackling with barely contained power. "This is impossible," Captain Vasquez whispered, staring at the displays showing dozens of fleets converging on their position. The nearest Allied forces were 3 days away at best. How are they getting here so fast? Marcus barely heard her. His consciousness was stretching across space itself, riding the quantum networks that Valdris maintained through sheer force of will. He could feel the thoughts and intentions of 1,000 ship captains, could sense the fear and determination of crews from dozens of different species, all united by the simple knowledge that they were no longer alone in their fight. The Kethmori fleet had settled into standard siege formation around the planet, clearly expecting a prolonged bombardment of a defenseless target. Commander Zakthor's arrogance was evident. In every movement of his ships, they weren't even maintaining proper defensive screens. That arrogance proved fatal when the first Allied reinforcements began. Arriving, the Shalveth squadron materialized out of hyperspace like avenging angels, their crystal hulls refracting starlight into devastating focused beams that sliced through Kethmori armor like paper. Before the enemy could respond, Velthari ships were among them, their organic weaponry releasing clouds of nanodisruptors that ate through electronic systems faster than they could be repaired. But it was the arrival of humanity's contribution that truly turned the tide. Captain Vasquez's desperate calls for help had reached the colonial fleet's most experimental vessel, the UES Defiance, a prototype ship that married human engineering with alien technology, salvaged from a dozen first-contact scenarios. The Defiance dropped out of hyperspace directly above the Kethmori flagship, its hybrid systems allowing it to do something that should have been impossible. The ship's quantum phase generators created a localized space-time distortion, effectively freezing the enemy dreadnoughts, weapons and engines while leaving its sensors fully. Functional Commander Zakthor found himself watching helplessly as his mighty fleet was dismantled around him by forces that should never have been able to coordinate so effectively. His panicked communications to his remaining ships carried a note of genuine terror that Marcus found deeply satisfying. "How are they doing this?" the Kethmori commander shrieked. "No species has the capability for this kind of real-time coordination across interstellar distances." "Show them," Valdris advised through their bond. "Let them see what they face." Marcus stood and walked to the center of the command area, his enhanced awareness reaching out to touch every ship in the battle. When he spoke, his words carried across space itself, reaching the ears of every participant in the conflict. This is Marcus Chen, speaking for the Alliance of Free Worlds. You wanted to know how we coordinate our forces, Commander Zakthor? The answer is simple. We remember what your empire chose to forget, that the strongest bonds are forger. The destruction of the Fourth Harvesting Fleet sent shockwaves across the galaxy that went far beyond the tactical implications. Within hours, the quantum networks were buzzing with reports of uprisings on every world under Kethamori control. Slave colonies that had endured centuries of oppression suddenly found the courage to throw off their chains. Marcus sat in the transformed command center, his consciousness simultaneously monitoring dozens of liberation movements while his human body remained firmly planted on Kepler 442b. The sensation was disorienting at first, but he was rapidly adapting to his new role as the central nervous system of a galactic resistance movement. The Andromeda sector has gone completely dark to Kethamori communications, reported Zefkai, her color patterns shifting to excited golds and blues. 3 entire star systems have declared independence in the past 6 hours. It's not just the outer territories either, added Captain Vasquez, now coordinating the rapidly expanding human colonial response. We're getting signals from worlds deep in the Empire's core, places that have been under Kethamori rule for so long that most species thought they were extinct. But even as victory seemed within reach, Marcus felt a growing sense of unease through his bond with Valdris. The dragon's ancient memories carried warnings about the Kethamori that went beyond their military capabilities. They are not like other conquerors, she explained through their link. Most empires collapse when their fleets are defeated or their leadership is destroyed, but the Kethamori have faced extinction before and survived by embracing horrors that other species would never contemplate. As if summoned by her words, Keeper Nulvash materialized beside them, their light-absorbing form seeming to darken the air around them. The archive concurs with the last mother's assessment. Historical records show that the Kethamori have used forbidden weapons when facing defeat, technologies that threaten the fundamental structure of reality itself. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. What kind of forbidden weapons? Entropy bombs that can age entire star systems to death in moments. Quantum viruses that infect the basic laws of physics. Reality anchors that can lock a region of space into a state of perpetual suffering. The Keeper's voice carried the weight of civilizations that had learned these truths too late. They would rather see the galaxy burn than allow it to slip from their control. The confirmation of their fears came 3 days later, when long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from the heart of Kethamori space. The readings were unlike anything in known physics, patterns of force that seemed to violate several fundamental laws simultaneously. They're activating something big, Captain Vasquez reported, her face pale as she studied the incoming data. The energy output is comparable to a stellar collapse, but the harmonics are all wrong. It's like they're trying to tear a hole in space itself. Through his expanded consciousness, Marcus could feel the disturbance as a growing wrongness that set his teeth on edge. Across the galaxy, sensitive species were reporting nightmares and waking visions of darkness spreading between the stars. Even the quantum networks themselves seemed to be developing stutters and dead zones. The Void Engine, Valdris identified with something approaching terror. I had hoped it was only a myth preserved in the darkest archives. What does it do? Marcus asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. It weaponizes entropy itself, creating expanding zones where causality breaks down and meaning ceases to exist. Anything caught within those zones doesn't just die. It never existed at all. Entire star systems can be erased from history, leaving not even memories behind. The magnitude of the threat was staggering. This wasn't just a weapon that could destroy planets or even solar systems. It was a device that could literally unwrite reality, removing entire civilizations from the timeline as if they had never been born. How do we stop something like that? Captain Vasquez asked. Before anyone could answer, Marcus felt a new presence touching his consciousness through the quantum networks. It was vast and ancient, carrying the weight of eons and the accumulated wisdom of species whose names were lost to time. We are the predecessors. The presence identified itself. Those who came before all current civilizations, who seeded the galaxy with life and watched it grow. We had hoped never to intervene directly again, but the activation of the Void Engine forces our hand. The communication came with images that nearly overwhelmed Marcus's enhanced mind. Visions of the galaxy as it had been billions of years ago, when beings of pure thought had shepherded the first organic life from primordial soup to sentience. The predecessors had been the ultimate guardians, protecting growing civilizations from cosmic threats beyond imagination. The Kethamori Empire was our greatest failure. The presence continued. We allowed their ancestors to discover technologies that should have remained buried. Now they threaten to use those technologies to unravel everything we spent eons creating. What can we do? Marcus asked. How do you fight something that can erase you from existence? The same way the Star-Touched once fought such threats, through absolute unity of purpose and the willing sacrifice of those who understand what is at stake. The Void Engine draws its power from the fear and hatred that permeates Kethamori space. But there is another force equally powerful, the love and hope that binds free peoples together. Through his bond with Valdris, Marcus began to understand what was being asked of them. The quantum networks that now connected every free world in the galaxy could be used for more than communication and coordination. With enough willing participants, they could create a resonance cascade that would overwhelm the Void Engine's ability to process entropy. You're talking about linking every conscious mind in the galaxy into a single network, he realized. The psychic feedback alone could kill millions, or it could transform them into something greater than the sum of their parts, Valdris countered. The Star-Touched were not originally a single species. We were the result of just such a unity, when 12 different races chose to merge their consciousness to fight an ancient evil. The decision that faced them was staggering in its implications. They could attempt to link every free mind in the galaxy into a unified consciousness capable of overwhelming the Void Engine through sheer force of unified will. But the process would fundamentally change everyone involved, potentially creating a new form of existence that transcended individual identity. The choice must be freely made by each world, each species, each individual, Marcus said finally. We can't force this kind of transformation on anyone. What followed was perhaps the most intensive communication effort in galactic history. Marcus found himself speaking to billions of beings across thousands of worlds, explaining the threat and the proposed solution. His consciousness, supported by Valdris's ancient power and the predecessor's cosmic perspective, reached into every corner of known space. The responses varied wildly. Some species embraced the idea immediately, their collective consciousness already predisposed to unity. Others required extensive debate and soul-searching before reaching their decision. A few chose to remain separate, accepting the risk of erasure rather than the certainty of transformation. But as the hours passed and the Void Engine's influence continued to spread, more and more worlds chose to join the network. Humans linked with Velthari, who connected to Shalveth, who reached out to species whose names Marcus couldn't even pronounce. The quantum networks began to resonate with something that transcended mere information exchange. It is time, Valdris announced as the last few worlds made their choice. The Void Engine nears full activation. If we are to act, it must be now. Marcus took a deep breath and opened his consciousness completely, allowing the thoughts and feelings of billions of beings to flow through him. The sensation was overwhelming, joy and fear, hope and despair, love and hatred all mixing together in a cosmic symphony of conscious experience. But underneath the chaos, he felt something else emerging. A unity of purpose that transcended individual differences, a shared understanding that they were all part of something greater than themselves, and most importantly, a love for existence itself that burned brighter than any weapon the Kethamori could devise. Now, he thought, and felt the thought echoed by every linked mind in the galaxy. The resonance cascade began. The resonance cascade exploded outward from Kepler 442b like a wave of pure consciousness, racing through the quantum networks faster than light itself. Marcus felt his awareness expand beyond anything he had thought possible, his individual identity becoming part of something vast and magnificent that encompassed every willing mind in the galaxy. Through billions of eyes, he saw the Void Engine as it truly was, a massive construct built into a hollowed-out moon at the heart of Kethamori space. Its surface writhed with energies that hurt to perceive directly, patterns of force that actively erased meaning from the universe around them. The space surrounding the device was already beginning to show signs of reality breakdown, stars flickering out of existence only to reappear in slightly different positions, as if the cosmos itself was developing amnesia. But the engine's operators had not anticipated the unified response of free consciousness. The device had been designed to feed on fear, hatred, and despair, the emotions that the Kethmori Empire had cultivated across their territories for millennia. It was not equipped to process the overwhelming tide of love, hope, and unified purpose that now crashed against its defenses. Feel our joy in existence, Marcus thought, and the thought was echoed by every linked mind. Feel our love for life in all its forms. Feel our determination to preserve the beauty of creation against those who would unmake it. The Void engine began to shudder as its entropy fields encountered forces they could not comprehend. How do you erase something that exists not just in physical space but in the shared consciousness of billions of beings? How do you destroy hope when it is backed by the unified will of an entire galaxy? Through the network, Marcus could feel the Kethmori operators struggling to understand what was happening. Their species had been shaped by eons of conquest and domination, their neural patterns optimized for processing hierarchy and control. The concept of truly voluntary cooperation was as alien to them as their empire was to the free peoples of the galaxy. Emperor Kethzar himself stood before the engine's control matrix, his multiple arms dancing across controls that no longer responded as they should. Through the shared consciousness, Marcus could feel the ancient ruler's growing panic as his ultimate weapon began to turn against itself. Impossible, the Emperor chittered in his harsh native tongue. Consciousness cannot be unified without conquest. Free will cannot be surrendered without force. That is where you are wrong, came a voice that seemed to speak for the entire galaxy. It was Marcus's voice, but also Valdris's, and Captain Vasquez's, and the harmonious tones of the Veltari, and the crystalline resonance of the Shalveth, and thousands of others all speaking as one. Free will freely given is the most powerful force in existence. The Void engine's reality distortion fields began to collapse inward as they encountered the unified field of consciousness. Where entropy should have increased, order spontaneously emerged. Where meaning should have been erased, new understanding blossomed. The weapon that was designed to unmake existence found itself instead catalyzing the birth of something unprecedented. We choose to become more than we were, the galactic consciousness declared. We choose unity without uniformity, cooperation without coercion, strength through diversity rather than domination. Emperor Kethzar made one final desperate attempt to assert control, pouring his species' collective will into the engine's failing systems. But the Kethmori understanding of consciousness was fundamentally flawed. They saw thoughts as weapons to be wielded, emotions as tools for manipulation, and free will as an obstacle to be overcome. They could not comprehend beings who chose to link their minds not for conquest, but for mutual growth, who surrendered individual supremacy not through defeat but through love for something greater than themselves. The Void engine imploded not with the violent destruction of a weapon, but with the gentle dissolution of a shadow when light finally reaches it. The terrible energies that had threatened to unravel reality itself were transformed into something else entirely, a field of pure creative potential that spread outward from the device's former location, where the field touched damaged space. Reality healed itself. Stars that had been flickering in and out of existence stabilized. Planets that had been caught in temporal loops found their natural rhythm restored. And across the former Kethmori Empire, the infrastructure of oppression simply stopped working. The slave collars that had bound millions of beings for generations crumbled to dust. The mind control implants that had forced entire species into servitude shut down permanently. The fear amplifiers that had kept populations in line fell silent, allowing natural emotions to return for the first time in centuries. Emperor Kethzar himself underwent the most dramatic transformation of all. As the unified consciousness touched his mind, he experienced something that his species had long forgotten: empathy. For the first time in his existence, he felt the pain he had caused, the suffering his empire had spread across the galaxy. The shock of that revelation broke something fundamental in his psyche, not destroying him but transforming him into something capable of growth and redemption. The old order has ended, the galactic consciousness observed. What shall we build in its place? The answer came not from any single mind but from the collective wisdom of billions of beings who had chosen unity over isolation. They would build a galaxy where strength came from diversity, where conflicts were resolved through understanding rather than force, where every species was free to pursue its own path while remaining connected to the greater whole. As the immediate crisis passed, the unified consciousness began to differentiate back into individual minds, though the connections remained. Marcus found himself back in his own body on Kepler 442b, but he was forever changed. He could still feel the presence of every being who had chosen to join the network. A warm background hum of consciousness that meant he would never truly be alone again. Valdris curled around him protectively, her scales now permanently marked with patterns that shifted and flowed with the rhythm of the galactic network. Well done, small warm friend. Though I suspect that designation is no longer accurate. Marcus smiled, feeling the approval and affection of billions of beings through their shared connection. I'm still human, just more connected now. Captain Vasquez approached, her eyes bright with wonder and the faint luminescence that marked all those who had joined the network. The colonial fleet is reporting peaceful surrenders across all Kethmori territories. It's like the entire empire just gave up. Not gave up, Marcus corrected gently. Woke up. The same choice we all made. To be part of something greater than ourselves. In the weeks that followed, the transformation of the galaxy accelerated beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Former Kethmori worlds requested admission to the Alliance of Free Worlds. Scientific advances that should have taken centuries were accomplished in days through the combined intellect of linked minds. Art and music flowered as species shared their cultures with unprecedented openness, and through it all Marcus tended his farm. The quantum communication arrays and defensive installations gradually gave way to simple growing things as the emergency passed and normal life resumed. But the wheat that grew in his fields now carried genetic patterns influenced by a dozen different worlds, and the eggs his chickens laid sometimes contained flecks of minerals that shouldn't have existed in this star system. The galaxy had been transformed by a simple act of kindness, a farmer sharing his last meal with a hungry stranger. But as Marcus looked up at the star-filled sky, now alive with the gentle hum of billions of connected minds, he knew that the real transformation had been in humanity itself. They had taught the galaxy something that the Kethmori Empire, for all its power, had never understood. That true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to build. Not from the power to dominate, but from the wisdom to serve. Not from the fear of others, but from the love of existence itself. And this is only the beginning, Valdris whispered through their bond, her ancient eyes fixed on the stars where new civilizations were already taking their first steps into the vast community of minds. Marcus smiled and returned to his work, knowing that somewhere among those distant stars, other farmers were sharing their meals with hungry strangers, and the galaxy was becoming a little brighter with each act of simple kindness. The harvest would be good this year. The harvest would be good for years to come.